The changes we choose. Throughout my career, I have become increasingly convinced that organizations reveal their character not only through the challenges they overcome, but through the opportunities they choose to pursue before change becomes unavoidable. When circumstances leave little room for maneuver, most organizations find a way to respond. Economic conditions deteriorate, new legislation is introduced, technology reshapes customer expectations, or competitors alter the landscape. In each case, leaders must act because the environment around them has already changed. The urgency is evident, the reasons are understood, and the consequences of doing nothing are usually clear. There is considerable skill in leading through these periods. They demand resilience, composure, and the ability to make difficult decisions when information is incomplete and time is limited. Yet I have gradually come to believe that they tell only part of the story. The more revealing measure of an organization often comes much earlier, while there is still time to choose a different path, and before external circumstances remove that choice altogether. It is one thing to respond well when change is imposed upon you. It is something altogether different to recognize that today's success may not be enough for tomorrow and to act while the organization still has the freedom to decide its own future. That distinction may appear subtle, but it often separates organizations that continually evolve from those that periodically reinvent themselves under pressure. Before change feels necessary. One of the greatest paradoxes of organizational life is that the best time to change is often when there appears to be no compelling reason to do so. Performance may be strong, financial results may be healthy, guests continue to return, customers remain satisfied, and colleagues have confidence in systems that have served the organization well for many years. Success creates stability, and stability naturally encourages continuity. After all, if something is working, why risk disrupting it? This is precisely the question thoughtful leaders must wrestle with. The difficulty is that organizations rarely decline overnight. More often, they drift gradually as the environment around them evolves, while their own assumptions remain largely unchanged. Customer expectations shift almost imperceptibly. Technology opens possibilities that did not previously exist. Competitors improve in ways that are initially difficult to detect. Workforce expectations evolve, societal priorities shift, and new capabilities emerge. None of these developments may seem significant in isolation, yet together they begin to alter what good performance looks like. By the time those changes become obvious, valuable opportunities have often already been lost. The organizations I've most admired were rarely those that waited for clear evidence that something was wrong. Instead, they developed a habit of remaining curious, even when circumstances appeared favorable. Success was never treated as proof that no further improvement was required. It was viewed as an opportunity to strengthen the organization, while there was still sufficient time, resource, and confidence to do so thoughtfully rather than reactively. This kind of curiosity is sometimes misunderstood. It is not an endless appetite for novelty, nor a belief that everything established should automatically practices deserve to endure because they continue serving both the business and its people well. The discipline lies in distinguishing between preserving what gives an organization its strength and preserving habits simply because they have become familiar. That distinction requires judgment more than courage. The quiet responsibility of stewardship. Perhaps this is why I have become increasingly drawn to the idea of stewardship. Leadership is often discussed in terms of influence, vision, or the ability to inspire others. Those qualities undoubtedly matter, but stewardship introduces another perspective. It asks leaders to think beyond the immediate demands of quarterly performance or today's operational priorities and consider the condition in which they will leave the organization for those who follow. Viewed through that lens, change becomes less about responding to problems and more about preparing responsibly for the future. In hospitality, this feels particularly relevant. Hotels operate within an environment that never stands still. Guest expectations continue to evolve. Digital technology reshapes almost every aspect of the customer journey, and sustainability is increasingly becoming an operational expectation rather than a strategic aspiration. At the same time, attracting, developing, and retaining talented people has become one of the defining challenges for many organizations. None of these developments arrived unexpectedly. Each emerged gradually, providing organizations with opportunities to observe, reflect, and prepare before circumstances demanded more urgent action. Some invested patiently in leadership capability, digital transformation, and guest experience while performance remained strong. Others delayed difficult decisions until external pressures removed the luxury of gradual improvement. The difference was rarely one of intelligence or commitment. More often, it reflected a different philosophy about the purpose of leadership itself. If leadership is viewed primarily as solving today's problems, then change naturally becomes reactive. If leadership is understood as stewardship, then preparing for tomorrow becomes part of today's responsibility. That preparation is often remarkably unremarkable. It may involve strengthening governance before weaknesses become visible, investing in leadership development before succession becomes problematic, or refining operational standards that already perform well because there is still room for improvement. These decisions seldom attract headlines because there is no obvious crisis driving them. Their value becomes apparent only later, when the organization is able to respond to changing circumstances with confidence rather than urgency. Choosing well. There is sometimes an assumption that progressive organizations are simply those most willing to embrace change. I have never found the reality to be quite so straightforward. Equally, organizations that resist every new idea in the name of tradition are unlikely to thrive indefinitely. The real challenge is not deciding whether change is good or bad. It is developing the judgment to recognize which parts of an organization should evolve and which deserve to remain constant. Every organization possesses traditions that provide stability, identity, and continuity. These are often among its greatest strengths. They create confidence for employees, familiarity for customers, and consistency in how the organization behaves. Yet organizations also accumulate practices that survive largely because nobody has paused to question whether they continue serving the purpose for which they were originally introduced. Distinguishing between the two is rarely easy. It demands leaders who understand their organizations well enough to recognize the difference between protecting enduring principles and protecting outdated assumptions. It requires curiosity that is disciplined rather than restless, confidence that remains open to challenge, and enough humility to acknowledge that yesterday's success may not automatically provide tomorrow's answers. Perhaps this explains why the most significant organizational changes often receive surprisingly little attention at the time. They are rarely dramatic announcements or sweeping transformations. More often, they begin with a conversation that asks whether there might be a better way. They continue through careful observation, thoughtful discussion, and a willingness to test long-held assumptions before circumstances make those conversations unavoidable. By the time others notice that the organization has successfully adapted, the most important decision has already been made. Someone recognized that there was still a choice. In a nutshell, the strongest organizations are not defined solely by how they respond when change becomes inevitable. They are often distinguished by the choices they make while there is still time to shape their own future.